I don't think he's got room in his soul to worry about his estranged brother. So, to all intents and purposes, I think William has disowned Harry.
Hi, I'm Rosie Wright, and this is Royal Confidential. Today we're joined by veteran royal correspondent Jennie Bond. Jennie, hello.
Hi there.
It's been quite a week of up and downs for the royals, really. I think we should start with, I don't know how you would describe the 72 hours in Nigeria.
I think that Harry and Meghan's trip to Nigeria was a huge success. I get a bit sick of everyone piling in on Harry and Meghan, almost regardless of what they do or where they are in the world. They wanted to go to Nigeria. They were invited to Nigeria. The main reason was for a possibility of the Invictus Games being staged there. Um, and as we know, Meghan has discovered that she's 43% Nigerian. A lot of people are very sneery about the whole thing, aren't they? The fact is, they went there, they were invited, it was a great success, and I personally wish them well.
It was sort of the royal tour that wasn't.
Well, I mean, we made it the royal tour that wasn't, didn't we? Because we covered it like a royal tour. Those who were able to get there, not very many of the British press were able to get there because of visa problems, etc. But, again, I say it's the media who splashed it all over the place. I don't think it made so much news in Nigeria. I've certainly read one report that said they were only the front page of one of 7 national newspapers. I'm not sure that's true, but you have to accept it's us who are all over it.
I think if that was the case, would they be a little bit disappointed that they hadn't maybe made more headlines in Nigeria?
Oh, they might be, yes. But again, we're trying to be negative. I do think we should be positive. Harry and Meghan are very, very famous around the world. Meghan is incredibly popular, particularly given her heritage in West Africa and places like Nigeria. And yeah, they love her and they love to see her and they find her inspirational, and she speaks well, and she speaks about empowering women and other things, which are very legitimate subjects that women ought to be talking about. And I think she did well.
It was very polished, wasn't it? I mean, we've had recent actual official royal tours that have gone, they've had some sour moments or some sour reviews, and that wasn't the case here. I mean, I think Meghan had steered it really expertly in terms of no PR gaffes, no sort of mistakes or blunders, and everywhere they went, they were very welcomed with open arms.
They were, and there were no gaffes and no difficult optics, which obviously was what happened when William and Catherine went to the Caribbean last time. I think they've learnt their lesson. Certainly, William won't let those kind of optics happen again. But no, there were no slip-ups here. It was very polished. She's a very polished woman. And I say she speaks very well. And I just think it was a great success for them. And, I hope it continues to go well for them.
Obviously, you've been there many times covering royal tours. What's the behind the scenes process and work that goes into organising something like that? And how difficult is it for Harry and Meghan to do it without, normally having the backing of, the palace behind them?
Well, on a normal royal tour, there is a huge press pack. I don't know how many people with Harry and Meghan, but they were only the ones who they wanted to be there. I'm sure it was a much smaller press pack. When you've got a large press pack, as with any other royal tour, there's an awful lot of organising that has to go into that. I mean, it's like a military operation. The planning starts from the palace's side months and months in advance, and from the press's side it starts also weeks in advance. And you get a book, you have a whole book with minute by minute countdowns and details about the engagements and where you've got to be. And then we all have to meet together. We arrive in South Africa or somewhere like that, or South Korea, and we have a big meeting with palace officials, all the press, a big, big room, maybe 60 press, the cameras and everyone, and we have to decide who's going to do what. Because, on a royal tour, normally there are maybe 5, 6, 7 engagements in the day. You might even go to 2 or 3 countries in the same day. You'll be on and off planes. It's a massive operation. So we have to share the footage. So it's very, very complicated. Now, I don't think this was anything like as complicated. And I think that's what Harry and Meghan are probably rejoicing in, that they can have as many press along as they want. They're hand-picked. They can do as many engagements or not as they wish. And the crucial difference is they are not representing the UK and they are not representing the monarchy. And that's the big difference. And it gives them a lot of freedom.
More freedom, but there's still the same level of scrutiny, really.
Yes, I suppose so, though I don't think there's the diplomatic pressure because
Mm.
normal royal tours obviously are all about bilateral relations and they are complicated. There's a reason they're there, and members of the royal family don't just choose to go somewhere. They're sent there by the Foreign Office. The Foreign Office requests that a member of the royal family will go to a certain country, and there's a reason for that, and that is improving bilateral relations and stuff like that. Now, none of those complications apply to Harry and Meghan, so there was therefore less scrutiny, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and it did look, there was charity visits, some nods to Princess Diana, meeting lots of adoring crowds. We were also sort of led to believe, I wonder what you make of this, that Meghan Markle has maybe deployed a stylist for the first time, and she's so elegant in the outfits that she wears. But, you make a mistake with something like an outfit, that can dominate the entire discussion. She was quite careful in wearing things she's already worn before, and it looked very tailored, as you'd imagine, and perfectly picked to suit where she was going to be, nods to her heritage to make sure she sort of fitted in, but stood, in one of those outfits, this really striking yellow dress she's worn before. She needs to kind of be a dominant, amazing part of the event without totally overshadowing it. So quite a lot of things she's got to balance in such a simple thing about what dress she wears.
Yes, it must be a nightmare, mustn't it? Oh, goodness me. I presume she had a stylist or someone to help her with it. And she looked fantastic. She did. I mean, I personally have a bit of a problem with Meghan or anyone, including members of the royal family, wearing such expensive outfits and such dripping with jewels that are worth thousands and thousands of pounds when you're going to somewhere like Nigeria. Personally, I don't see why you do that. It seems a little out of tune when most Nigerians are just thinking where the next meal is going to come from. But it's not only Meghan who does that. The royals do that as well. Perhaps Meghan felt that's what was expected of her because she does still feel royal, even though she doesn't want to be part of the royals. I find that a bit odd, personally, but she looked great.
Yeah, is there a bit of a tension there in the charity work she's trying to do and then how she's presenting herself?
Well, I just think that Diana, towards the end of her life, looked quite different. I mean, I'm thinking about Angola, going to Angola in 1997 in January, February, and she got off the plane. I remember it was a male correspondent who said, "Oh, what's she going to be wearing?" And I said, I don't really care what she's wearing. She's here for a very serious purpose. I really don't care what she's wearing." As it happened, what she wore, in fact, was important because it was a pair of jeans, well, sort of, white jeans, a jacket. She came to work, hardly any jewels, no frills, no expensive stuff at all. And I just thought that was a statement from Diana, and she maintained that throughout the tour. We didn't see any dressy stuff. And I think that's how you should carry out a visit, be it a royal visit or not, if you're going to somewhere in the world that is so poverty stricken.
So it may be that Harry and Meghan have kind of, brushed off from their tour, quite happy with it, think it's gone well. The rumours are that back here at Buckingham Palace, particularly, William is kind of uncomfortable. That might be putting it quite generously about the trip. What have you heard?
I don't think William gives Harry a thought. I think, as far as William is concerned, Harry doesn't really exist. I think William has enough pressure on his heart and his head with his wife undergoing cancer treatment and his father and a big job and his kids. I don't think he's got room in his soul to worry about his estranged brother. So, to all intents and purposes, I think William has disowned Harry.
Really? I mean, some of the rumours were, and I'm looking at the quote here, this was in the Mirror, they said that the Prince of Wales was determined to find a way to stop it happening in the future, whilst Charles was angrier than anyone had ever seen him.
Yes, it's completely unsourced, that, though. We don't know. It's an unnamed source written by someone. I don't know what his particular connections are, whether maybe they're brilliant connections. Personally, I've given you my view. I don't think William has time for that kind. I don't think he wants to waste his emotional energy on a brother who is so estranged and who's hurt him so badly. And I don't think he cares what Harry does.
I know, Jenny, I think lots of people thought, just coming from the perspective of any family or any friend going through something like what they are actually, when you just think about them as a normal family, and of course they're not, but to have your father go through a diagnosis like that and then your brother's wife, you think that was the moment, wasn't it, where there would be reconciliation?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but we've said that before. We said that when the Duke of Edinburgh died, this will be the moment. This will be the moment. Actually, after Philip's funeral, they had a huge row outside near the graveyard, didn't they? Harry has said that, and that was when Charles looked up at his two boys and said, "Please, please, boys, don't make my final years a misery." I thought, well, when the Queen died, the late Queen, surely that will be the moment where they think, life is short, and life is not worth lingering over these disputes and ill feelings. But no, there was no reconciliation. So I thought probably when Harry flew back to see his dad, that would be the beginning of a reconciliation with Charles. Didn't expect it with William. I think, as I say, that's done and dusted. But it seems that that's not the case either. I was gobsmacked when last week, or whatever it was, a few days ago, Harry was over here before the Nigerian trip, and Charles didn't have time to see him. I was sure they would meet, and I think it just speaks volumes about the depth of hurt, the particular hurt over how Harry criticised viciously, really, Camilla and Catherine. And I just think as Charles is recovering from cancer, once again, it's almost like the emotional strength to deal with the Harry problem just isn't there. And so they didn't meet. I think it's incredibly sad. I also, in my heart of hearts, I'm reluctant to criticise the king when he is undergoing cancer treatment, but personally, as a parent myself, I think there are times when you've got to be the bigger person. You've just got to say, open your arms and say, you have been a silly sod. You really have. And we've got quite a lot to work out. But for now, just let's have a hug. But sadly, that didn't happen.
But you wonder which side, or what do you know of which side the conflict is being sort of like stonewalled a little bit? Is it all coming from Harry, or, I mean, you've said the king could spread his arms out. Who is really entrenching the division?
Well, I think early on it was Harry who was demanding an apology, and it was going to be no meeting of minds or meeting in reality until there was an apology for the affronts he saw had been made to his wife. But now I think the tables have turned somewhat. The messages coming from Harry's side of things is that, he's ready to, I don't know about forgive and forget, but at least to forgive. And that he loves his family. He said that quite publicly, and he wants to see more of them. But it is Charles and William who seem to be resisting reconciliation at this point. So I think it was first one, then the other.
But what does that say about what we know of, William's character? It kind of doesn't seem to add up.
Oh, William's very stubborn. He always has been, very obstinate. And I think once he's set his mind on something, it's going to be very hard to dissuade him from that course of action. I mean, look, I really hope that as the years go by, they will mature into thinking, blood is thicker than water, whatever. But I just think time can be a great healer, but it can also entrench your positions so much that we have no expectation now when Harry comes over. We don't even really talk about whether he might meet William. Don't expect it. And I think that will become the norm.
Well, I think we certainly won't now after that most recent visit, 48 hours here, which I think was in part for the Invictus Games, wasn't it?
Yes, it was indeed. And no one's going to take that away from Harry. a massive achievement. And it would have been lovely to see some of his, the Windsor family at St Paul's Cathedral to celebrate his success, or the success of the Games, 10th anniversary. But at least he had the Spencer side there. He had his aunt Jane and he had his uncle Earl Spencer. And there was a very, very, very warm greetings there. He was obviously overjoyed to have them there, and one of his Spencer cousins as well. So I think Diana would have very much approved of that.
Yeah, it was kind of warm embraces. I think you described it perfectly. And you think it's obviously that side of the family, and maintaining and cherishing and looking after those relationships are still really important to Harry.
Yes, I think so. I think they've been in fairly close contact over the years, and you'll remember, many people would remember, Earl Spencer's oration at Diana's funeral, a very angry oration, really, in which he pledged that they, the boys' blood family, would guard the way that Diana had wanted to bring them up and let their souls sing. It makes me go tingly even to think of that, covering that speech. It was an astonishing moment in royal history, and I think he has stayed true to that, for the sake of the boys and for the sake of his late sister.
One of the sort of rumours going around about why they didn't meet was that, the king was just quite simply too busy. I think Camilla wishes he wasn't so busy. It's quite hard to criticise your other half in public, particularly when you are the queen and your other half is the king. She wants him to slow down.
I know. Yes, you have this. It's rather a comical image, isn't it? Behind the scenes, Camilla saying, "For goodness' sake, Charles!"
Yeah.
She said, she was at a garden party, I think it was, a couple of days ago, and she said, she was asked how he was doing. She said, "Well, he would be doing well if he would just behave himself." So.
Yeah.
He's obviously, we're told he's like a caged lion, trying to get out and do more, and he's doing a lot. Most of the engagements are slightly tailored, like the investiture at Windsor, which she carried out the other day. Normally there'd be about 70 people there, but there were only 50. So they're making events a little bit shorter for him so he doesn't get too tired.
Yeah, I think Queen Camilla was asked how is he? Is he getting better? And she said, well, he would be getting better if he behaved himself. The impression you get is, I think Cage Lion puts it right. He's really frustrated because wants to be doing more. Obviously, has waited and prepared for so long to do this job to the best he can. And I think, the first year, the public really warmed to him in a way. And I think there was a bit of caution, wasn't there, to think, how is this new era going to look? And it seems to be driven into him and his personality and his DNA to be busy, be active, be working, and, showcase, not just to us in the UK, but to the world, the sort of strength and the reliability of the royal family.
I think he's thoroughly irritated by what's happened. To be stopped in your tracks, as he has been after, just 18 months or so on the throne, was deeply frustrating for him, I think. Also, obviously, as he has said, shocking. It was a great shock to be told you've got cancer. But he was a man, not exactly with a mission, but in a bit of a hurry to get on all the things he'd been thinking about during his reign. Which by definition is never going to be as long as his mother's. We know he gets irritated. Let's think back to the pen gate, when pens don't work, he gets cross. And I think he has been thoroughly crossed by the fact his engagements have been stopped and now somewhat curtailed. But he's everywhere at the moment, isn't he? Honestly, you can't open a paper or catch up on the news without seeing Charles in some form or another, albeit a portrait, a blood red portrait, or he's pops up at the Opera House, which he did on stage at the Opera House last night, which no one expected. So he's staying out late as well.
Yes, partying in Buckingham Palace, meeting members of the media. He definitely seemed to enjoy that in the Opera House yesterday. Was a huge surprise for everyone who was there. It must be difficult to orchestrate those surprise engagements, and then tricky for the press to be able to follow them. From your experience, to what extent is a surprise quite carefully choreographed, and maybe there's a nod to one or two well-known royal journalists to say, okay, be in situ, be here?
Yeah, there's not a lot of point in pulling a surprise of any kind. which is nearly always for a good cause, because that's what the family do. They do, their campaigns and causes, and there's not a lot of point if there's no coverage whatsoever. So somebody has to be told. So yes, there's a whisper. I like. Oh gosh, you were asking me now. Go right back to the night at the Ritz, with the first night that we saw Camilla and Charles together. I think it was
Oh my gosh,
2002.
yes.
And
So
that
what happened? Did you get advanced kind of prior knowledge that was going to be happening?
you get code, really. You get code. I mean, there was rumours going around. They started at Westminster. Our Westminster office saying something's going on at the Ritz.
Yeah.
And so I rang the palace, and I said, kind of, I said, shall I take my ladder down to the Ritz? There's no comment. And then maybe, yeah. And so you grab your ladder and you grab your crew and go racing down to the Ritz. And
yeah,
as the night went on, there were 200 cameras there, and then we saw Charles and Camilla come out. So yes, a few people are given a little coded warning.
Okay, and that gives you a hint, get ready, get prepared, bring everything. Now it would be bring extra batteries and a spare phone charge and whatever it would be to camp out for a long night. You mentioned the portrait. We've got to talk about this because Jonathan Yeo, who's actually been interviewed on Times Radio, has talked about the process of literally sitting with the king. And the king apparently wanted to say, I want to be chatting while you're sitting with me. And Jonathan really wanted to kind of capture some of the king. Tell me truthfully, Jennie, your very first impression of the portrait.
My first impression was, oh my God, that's another hideous portrait where, there've been some of the late Queen. And then I looked at it and I thought it's not hideous at all. The face, I think, is fantastic. I mean, he looks very kindly, and he is a kind man. And the hands are good. And I agree that, well, I think art, I'm not an art critic, but it has to move on. You can't just do it's not like a photograph. And the red uniform would perhaps have drawn your eye if it had just been normal, but as it's all blotched out, it brings Charles's head out really well. And I think the pièce de résistance, the bit I really like, is the butterfly, which we're told was the king's idea. And it's a monarch butterfly, which is very appropriate. But also, I remember being in Mexico with Charles when he was prince, and we went up a mountain in Mexico. All my memories of these tours are so blurred.
No, this is brilliant. It's such insight. So you're in Mexico.
We were in Mexico, and we had to go a big mountain. I can't remember if Charles was on horseback, but lots of people were on horseback. There were lots of Mexicans on horseback. Anyway, and up they go up this mountain, because it was the place where the monarch butterflies swarm at this particular time of year, if butterflies swarm. But anyway, up he went, and there were monarch butterflies all around, and all around us as well, and they were beautiful, and it only happens quite rarely, and it was all timed to perfection. And so it has a resonance probably for him, beyond the fact that it's a monarch butterfly, great play on words, that it has memories for him, and also, I think, as Jonathan's pointed out, it has that symbolism of a metamorphosis from prince to king, from caterpillar to butterfly. So I thought that was lovely. So after my initial reaction, actually, I liked the portrait.
I had the same perspective as you. When I first thought it, I thought, because it is a little bit difficult to differentiate his uniform from the background as well. But it definitely has grown on me. And, the butterfly, we should just mention, even in the sort of most literal way of looking at it, he is an environmentalist. He loves the planet. He cares so much. So if there was going to be one thing that was a nod to sort of life outside of just being in the palace and being the king, I think the environmental nod was probably very apt.
Yeah, it works on very many levels, that butterfly. And if it was Charles's idea, although he seemed to say, well, I think when Jonathan said that was your idea, he said, oh, was it? Was it really? He didn't seem to quite remember, so I don't know. But it works.
Do you think the king likes it?
He looked a little astonished, but obviously he'd seen it before in almost its finished state. And I think he said, oh, you've been fiddling a little bit, haven't you, since? I think he probably would. I mean, his own style of art is much more realistic, isn't it? Much more just what he sees, his landscapes and everything. It's not so impressionist, but I think he probably does like it. I don't know. I have to ask him.
Jennie, thank you so much. It's been such a privilege to talk to you. Thank you, Jennie.
All right, pleasure.
You've been listening to Royal Confidential with me, Rosie Wright. If you'd like to support us, you can subscribe for more royal news, and you can find me on Early Breakfast from 5 o'clock every weekday morning. For now, goodbye.